Mark. Hello, this is KT0 here bringing another i3 commentary on Snowplow. And as you might notice, my voice has gone significantly more audible and more high quality as well. That's because I finally have got my new mic set up. So here we go. This is also a testing of how the broadcast setting of the software would do on this particular case. And let's get back right into the game. And for today we have an Empire versus Allies game on Snowplow, and on the top side of the map, Helling is our Empire player. Goes by the name of OceanBlue, and is also in the color of OceanBlue, which is very fitting. And on the downside, or travel clock, is our as an Allies player, YuiYui 645. I just ignore the number and call him YuiYui. Yes, a very cute, very adorable name, and he has opened with an air rush from our Allies player. How very classic of him. And we are looking at a tremendous amount of pressure coming in from the Allies player right here, and the Empire player unfortunately has not gone for a MAC opening. Instead, he is going to be opening with the third refinery, so his entire will be significantly, and I do mean significantly, delayed. Excuse me. Whether it affects the course of this game or not, I do not know. I have seen people put out things that are crazier, so I would say I would put a trust into our Empire player and trust that he will defend the Empire faction, the honor of the Empire. Well, and as we speak, the Apollo fighter is now produced from the airbase of the Allies player, and he now has 2 indicators, so I would expect a large amount of air pressure coming in soon. And he's also moving his MCV out after constructing 2 refineries in his main base, so he's looking to expand, I would assume, behind this air pressure to the Empire player, his opponent here. And I would suspect that he would be able to do a very good job of it, since his opponents does only have 2 dojos and does not really have a whole lot of money to support them. And going by the pace of air pressure coming in from the Allies player, I would assume that the economy of the Empire player is going to go downhill pretty soon here. Yeah, that's the what I was looking for. Never mind. And we're going to see the Empire player is now moving his dojo core through the water to a unknown location. I would assume it's here, so that he would be able to deploy some sneaky tactics in order to flank the MCV of his opponents. And once that is taken out, the only thing that he needs to deal with are just 2 refineries and 1 airbase. But keep in mind that the MCV does have a lot of armor, so the Allies player would have sufficient reaction time to react to that and give himself a backup plan in case his MCV does get destroyed. But it all comes down to the execution of plans and not how you planned, so I've found out. And indeed, the dojo core from the Empire player has now been spotted by the Allies player, and YuYui is going to take it out very nicely and overkilled with 3 Vindicators, or pouring the bombs on the pool core there. And we are seeing that the Allies player playing safe here has spent a bit of money to erect up a multi-gunner turret at the center of the map. The location here, this relatively wide choke, I would say, but it is the main road, the main traffic. That's where the main traffic of the 2 army is. So anything that comes by and try to take the Allies player's main base from that direction from the Empire player is going to be delayed quite a bit. The Empire player would have to erect up a large amount of tank busters, or indeed tanks, in order to push to this location, since this multi-gunner turret is there. And we are seeing that the Empire player has indeed the one that got destroyed was actually his 3rd dojo core. His 2nd dojo core has gone to this location, occupied this all direct here, so he's going very economy heavy in order to give him a large amount of money, obviously, to transition into MAX in order to deal with the air coming from the Allies player. And the Allies player, recognizing that, is proceeding with his plan, and he's now erected up a 3rd refinery at the center of the map, and he now has a matching economy. Oh, I finally got my new mic set up, and it does seem that I am out of breath just a little bit there. And go back right to again. We don't see a whole lot of action coming on the map, but we are seeing a infantry push into this multi-cannon turret here. That's why you don't push the turrets with infantry, because, well, your opponent, if he does have his MCV in place, he can just erect up another, and you have difficult time dealing with that, and you're throwing your infantry away, which is just always a bad idea. And the Empire player now just going to continue with his infantry pressure. Wow, he's not looking to transition to max here, which is very puzzling to me, since you do need max in order to deal with the air. Otherwise your opponent can just bombard you all day, and you wouldn't have anything to do with that. And if you deploy the static defense that you need to protect your refinery, that is just the refinery, then what about your opponent just use the time to take up to, say, a large amount of ground force, and he just push a straight push into your main base with air supports? That would be extremely hard to deal with indeed. And we see that the Empire player has indeed sold his dojo at the 3 o'clock of the map here, since he now does have the ore derricks, and he's looking to take a second ore derrick as well. And he does have a significant infantry force, while his opponents, the allies player, is expanding again into his opponent's side of the map, and he's expanding into the water, also protected by a multi-cannon turret here. So, well, going by the fact that the Empire players are going with only infantry, I wouldn't assume that the fourth refinery of the Allies player is going to be under pressure anytime soon, and he is actually sitting very comfortably at the center of the map here, looking just to secure the map control with one airbase worth of units and a backup boot camp as well. The boot camp just now starting its production of infantry here, and the Empire player does already have a very large infantry force. I don't know how well would it fare though. If you put one peacekeeper into those turrets, it would be deadly, and I do mean deadly to infantry, and I just don't know. We will see how the execution of the Empire player fare. Personally, I would definitely bias against the Allies player and bias towards the Empire player. And the Docks Core is going to be destroyed by the air from the Allies player there, and I would think that there was only a distraction, or was he actually looking for to deploy some sneaky tactics and move his dock here and try to flank his opponents into his main base and destroy the economy? I don't know, but that is the end of that. It is all over. There's no point in discussing anymore. And surprisingly, this large amount of infantry actually fares fairly well to be against the turrets of the Allies player there, and only 2 turrets at the center of the map with 2 peacekeepers in them. I actually don't know how well would they fare, but we shall see. And recognizing that if he continues with this decision here with just 1 airbase and 1 boot camp, he will eventually be overwhelmed by his opponent's units. He has erected up a armored facility, is the Allies player, and he's looking to produce some max and some anti-infantry weapons, I would assume, to deal with this large infantry force of the Empire player there. And the Empire player does have his Mecha Bay, yes, Mega Bay. This is not a Mech Bay, it's a Mega Bay. Up for a while now, but it's not producing anything out of it. I would assume he either doesn't have the money, or he's just completely forgotten about it, which is extremely unpreferable, but hey. And now we see that the 3 o'clock order X has been spotted by the Allies player, and is looking to use his Vindicators to destroy that. And yes, the Allies player has now taken up to tier 2, so his airbase now can produce this quadcopter, very deadly harassment weapon there. And the power structure, the power plants, the generators of the Empire faction is now being shredded by the air force of the Allies player there. I don't know how well would they fare though, since the Allies player is only using this air force as a distraction and suppression method in order to give him time to erect up a large enough ground force to give him the chance to put up a straight fight right in the Empire player's face. And the Empire player is still continuing the production of infantry, and in the meantime he is producing Tengus out of the Mega Bay there. I don't know how well the Tengus fare though. The firepower of Tengus to Apollo is basically 4-1, so you have to have 3 or above Tengus number in order to deal with 1 Apollo fighter. And since his opponent does have i.e. the Allies player, does have the option to erect up more air bases. I don't know how well they fare, and now the water expansion of the Empire player has indeed been spotted, and the Allies player has put a cryocopter. Inexplicably, he pulled the cryocopter out, so is there push happening somewhere on the map that I'm not seeing? No. Mysteriously, the Allies player has decided not to attack the water expansion of his opponents and not even destroying the miner there. I don't know why, but hey, perhaps he's calling back his air force in order to support this ground force that is forthcoming to his opponent's phase, and he is looking to freeze this order with 2 cryocopters, then destroy it with 1 Vindicator bomb there, and is indeed a very wise choice, and is now spotting the dojo at the 3 o'clock of the map here, not 3 o'clock, the 9 o'clock of the map here, is now going to destroy with Vindicator, and he is suppressing the infantry coming out of the dojo with Vindicator as well. The Vindicator has ranked up to Lieutenant, so it's very potent indeed, and the cryocopter is now going to move into position to support his tank force, I assume. Yes, are you going to push anytime soon? I would assume yes, because your opponent doesn't have any entire Tengus, and he's actually giving the Empire enough time to erect up enough Tengus in order to deal with the Air Force, and he's not constructing a second air base. He is just continuing the production of cryocopters. No, he's solely relying on 2 cryocopters and is supporting 1 armor facility with 4 refineries, and is now continuing. I think he's just putting up the tanks, which makes a small amount of sense. Well, it does make sense, since if your opponent only have infantry and you have a large amount of tanks, and you do have the air support from the air, and you can basically crush the infantry to no end and force them out of position, and so you can destroy the structures there. But this opponent does now have a large number of Tengus, and they are protected by pointy defense drone as well. Is now going to move in to cover this. Oh no, the dojo just got destroyed, but those Vindicators could be caught out of position, and indeed they are. Oh, why are you moving? Oh, I see. He's looking to destroy the cryocopter there, so the cryocopters cannot be deployed to somewhere else while the straight encounter is happening, and he's now looking to perform a air lockdown on his opponents as well, and he has. Well, he has to move his Tengus away, so my prediction was completely wrong there, but hey, I don't mind. And the Empire player is now continuing the production of infantry still, and he does have a reasonable number of tank buster here. Can't see how many, but hey. And he has landed 1 Tengu into the main mining depot of his opponents there, looking to harass the miner, and his opponent is not responding mysteriously, and he's now just looking to move in with his Apollo fighter, but 1 Apollo fighter is not quite enough to deal with this large amount of air force coming from the Empire player, and the Empire player just buying himself time to distract his opponents long enough in order to destroy the miners, and 1 miner did get destroyed, the other one was forced to evacuate out of a mining operation, and no, the Allies actually managed to preserve 2 of his miners that haven't. That means he doesn't have to reproduce them, well, obviously, and the Empire player is now sneakily landing the main Tengu force here, looking to take out this refinery here. He's not even aiming for the miner, he's aiming for the refinery itself. Is so smart, since you can draw your opponent's attention away with just 1 Tengu, and you can just use the rest of your Tengu to do some work. And indeed, his opponent is not looking to bomb this large amount of Tengu force on with just 1 Vindicator, and the mining at the main base of the Allies was heavily disrupted, and now the Tengu finally got destroyed, and the miner was on the red, which means his movement will be slower and his mining efficiency will be decreased, and indeed that is exactly what the Empire player was looking to do. And it seems like that there was an engagement somewhere at the center of the map. The tanks of the Allies player seems to be damaged there. I'm sorry guys, it seems that I have missed something very, very important and very exciting as well, and I promise I will look at the minimap from now and not miss any more. I'm so excited with my new mic, so bear with me guys. And now the Allies player is selling his airbase with his last breath, not giving his opponent time to chance to rank up his Tengus, and indeed the 2 Apollo fighters are now moving in to perform an air lockdown, so the Vindicators can just go to work and destroy those Tengus, and those Tengus, without the ability to travel through the air, they cannot evacuate from this position long enough. But all those Tengus are just a distraction force. Now the Empire player has successfully taken up to tier 2. He does have the excuse me, the protection capability of tanks, and he will be able to perform a straight push into his opponent's heart, which is just right at the center of the map, looking to be pounded at the face. I can only assume that this is a plan. This is so excited. The tension's building up. It is killing me. I don't know. It was just a joke. And we see the infantry force. We do an army comparison here. The infantry force of the Allies player is blatantly inferior to that of his opponents. His opponent has a large amount of infantry force support, and many of them are actually tank busters, which have those very potent beams against vehicles. And his opponent does have 4 refinery, as opposed to the Allies players 2, and the rest of the refineries, 2 of them are actually being harassed heavily. And well, one of the miner does survive, and while the other one was destroyed by this one Tengu here, and the Empire player is being very pesky here, looking to harass his opponent with his Tengus, and done so very beautifully. And now, with the Tengu's harassment finished and his opponent's army tanks out of position, he is going to perform a large push right at the center of the map, looking to destroy the defense infrastructure of his opponents and eliminates the MCV and the armor facility and the barracks, i.e. the most of the unit production structure there. And with this amount of tank busters and tanks for tanking, the turrets of the Allies player just go down so incredibly fast. And it would be nice if the Empire player has enough APM in order to move his MCV, not his MCV, his Tengus in for another round of harassment while this push is happening. But it seems that our Empire player is very excited of the situation. He is now looking to destroy his opponents completely, and I don't really blame that his attention span is entirely at the center of the map here, and not utilizing this Tengu force at the back of his opponent. Excuse me, guys. At the back of his opponent's man base, and indeed he is doing so very successfully in terms of pushing into the center of the map, and he's now very imminent to his opponent's unit protection structure, the main unit protection structure, which is the armor facility. And with his opponent only on 2 refinery now, or now a 3rd, he does have the economic advantage completely at hand. But one secret protocol can turn the tide of the battle here. All the infantry force and amongst the 2 tanks as well are now being frozen by the cryo beam from space of the Allies player. And now the Allies player has rolled out a Athena cannons. Wow, this game is getting exciting, and it is heated to a very exciting state. And the Athena cannon, would she be able to do anything? No, he gets destroyed by 2 tank busters. Those beams are just so deadly to tanks, it's not even funny. And the Guardian tanks are now being trashed by the 3 tank busters. Although the majority of the force of the Empire player was destroyed by the cryo beam from space there, he seemingly still has enough in order to give his opponents a very deadly blow. And at the meantime, his macro was not sleeping, so he does have a substantial force ready to go for a 2nd round of pushing. And what is the answer of the Allies player to that? He's moving his prospectors away from mining. I don't know why, but and the Empire player is now landing one of his Tengus, looking to harass the refinery here. And indeed, one of the miners seems to have been destroyed. I think I don't see it anywhere. So, oh yes, it was destroyed. So the Allies player is now forced to spend his precious money at this point and reproduce the miners. And indeed, the Empire player still preserved most of his Tengu force. I would assume that. Wow, it's such a brilliant play, such efficiency from our Empire players. Good to watch and good to learn from. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just a fanboy of the Empire faction. I am just going to be honest with you. So I am excited whenever the Empire is winning with its mobility and its deadly transformers, indeed. And well, at this point of the game, the game is being very passive here. We see neither of these players looking to put up any direct engagement anytime soon. It seems that they are just being contented with just erecting up a large enough force to engage their opponents. I can only assume that when the engagement comes, the Empire player would have a significant advantage, given that his opponent does not micro the Athena cannon properly and shield most of his units from these deadly VXs. My god, if those VXs lift into the air and rain those rockets down on the tanks would be just demolished instantly. Wow. And with a large infantry support and a substantial number of tanks and VXs as well, the Empire player is now looking to push on into the center of the map again, and is now having a very large advantage, but he's not being careful with his... no, those VXs are getting destroyed here. Wow, why would you do this? No, lift them up, why? But regardless, the Empire player is still winning the fight here. It seems that the firepowers with infantry support and those enraged tanks are just too much for the Allies player to deal with, and indeed, even with the armor facility support, he's clearly losing the battle here, so he's trying to reposition his tanks in order to buy the infantry enough time to destroy his opponent's infantry in order to take out the support power from the Empire player, so he would not have enough firepower to bring those tanks down. But the armor facility of the Allies player just got destroyed by one tank shot here. Very beautiful play by the Empire player. Now his opponent is forced to erect up another unit protection structure in order to put up any form of pressure anytime soon. So was his macro slipping during this engagement? I think not. His money is very, very low, and he's looking to move in with 3 tanks to harass the refinery at the main base of the Allies player yet again. And looking at the Allies player's vision, he hasn't even seen his opponent's main base once. He doesn't know what his opponent... Oh, no, he doesn't know what his opponent have. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just eating my own words there, which I regularly do. What new is there to know? And we see the Allies player having been forced to reproduce a unit production structure. He has chosen to reproduce a air base in order to use air force, obviously, and the miner of the Allies player at the main base was destroyed before this tanks, which was supposedly on guard duty to cover it. And the refinery count of the Allies player at the moment is down to 2, and is having to reproduce his his miner as well, so not looking good for our Allies player, although he is being very wise in terms of using the reptile ACV here, trying to harass the waterside expansion of his opponents here. And his opponents, indeed, he's not paying attention, and now he is. I don't know whether he would have enough time to save this miner. Yes, he does get into the repairing range, but would the firepower of the ACV be too much? Yes, it was. So the miner of the Empire player does get destroyed by the ACV here, but very good reaction from the Empire player as well. He has erected up a unit sub or at the meantime of the destruction of his miner. He does have the means to deal with his ACV now, and the ACV was destroyed pretty beautifully, and he now has the chance of reproducing his miners there, so a fair bit of harassment down by the Allies player as well. And at this point of the game is being very passive. I don't really know what to say, but note that the other miner of the Allies player was also destroyed by a mysterious force that I didn't pay attention to, and the Allies player is now forced to reproduce the miner at that location as well. I would say that overall the Empire player is doing a very good job in terms of keeping his opponent's refinery counts down, and he is using the precious time in order to reproduce his army here, and looking to put up a straightforward fight to his opponent's face. And his opponent does have 2 unit production structures out now. He does have the airbase and armor facility as well, so a large amount of production capability coming in from the Allies player in order to deal with the impending push of the Empire player there. But I don't know how well would it fare though, since those structures are not free, and since the Empire player has been doing a good job in keeping the money of his opponents low, his opponent does not have the money inflow that he needs in order to do reproduction of structures and units at the same time. So the force of the Empire player might just be too much for the Allies player to deal with here, and we see that the Empire player is putting a very good focus fire, but the cryobeam from space is now catching the infantry out of position. Oh no! Most of the tanks are all, and all the infantries are now caught up position, and is now going to be frozen by the cryobeams, and is going to be completely trashed. What seemed to be a scary push from the Empire player now is nothing in the eyes of the Allies player. He is now just going to eradicate this force and perform a counter strike to his opponent's heart and destroy it completely. I will assume I cannot imagine any means of the Empire player can put up that he would use to come back to this game. One advantage that he does have though is his refinery count. He does have 4 refinery up and running, and he does have 2 unit production structures producing units non-stop. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just a bit out of breath here, but let us see the engagement of the 2 factions. And indeed the Allies player is now looking to perform push, and he is waiting for the Athena cannon to arrive in order to provide his army those covered and the long range fire that is so desperately needs to take out tanks from that range. And yes, the Empire was not paying attention, so one of his tanks, very precious tanks at this point if you will, was destroyed by the Athena cannon. The Athena cannon does have those very potent beams, which I would like to call the Helmet of Dawn, but hey, it is a different game. It's a different game. Stop. And we see never mind, let's go back to the serious side of the matter. And the Allies player is now looking to push into the base of his opponents, and he doesn't want to overextend himself. He's going to wait for more reinforcement here. I don't know whether it would be a good choice or not, but he is doing a good job in terms of keeping his opponent's army count down, and indeed he's destroying the tanks of the Empire player left and right. Doing a very good job at that. And he does have 1 Mirage tank. Yes, a Mirage tank. You call for the Mirage? I don't speak French. And it's now on the field, and it will support the army with its very potent beam cannon. I assume it's called beam cannon. It's just beam. Yes, it is just beam. And the target painter of the Guardian tank is now targeting the MCV, and the MCV is looking to crush those infantry and tanks, and doing so not so successfully, I would say. The Allies player is doing a very good job of splitting up his infantry there, and the Athena cannon might be caught out of position. Oh no, it was close, so it's not going to be taken out by the MCV just yet. Would it be enough time for the Allies player to destroy the MCV while the Athena cannon is backtracking? And it seems to be quite sufficient, since they do have the same speed. Well, how sad for the MCV, but for one, the MCV is heavy, so having the same speed with the Athena cannon while the Athena is doing a backward gear is, I would say, quite a fair thing to say. But now the MCV is surely going to be destroyed here. It's left with no HP, and now without any means of reproducing structures, the Empire player is basically doomed, I would say, unless he wants to spend his time and money to reproduce up another MCV, but it is going to be a very unwise choice, since it does take forever, and it's fairly expensive. It's 5,000 credits, so it's quite a heavy investment here. You only reproduce your MCV when you have the pressure on your opponents and you earn yourself enough time in order to put your money into something other than your army. So well, I would say that one good thing for the Empire player here is that he does have his two unit production structures are up and running. He did manage to preserve those, and he is now looking to push into his opponent's main base here. Well, the Allies player might be in trouble here. He does not have any army units in order to deal with this force from the Empire player here. He only has 1 Athena cannon, and the second Athena cannon coming out from the bay as well. A blunder, I would say. Wow, it's... Oh, but we are seeing that the Athena cannon's the secondary ability of the Athena cannon very wisely used by the Allies player there, preserving his second Athena as well. But now the tank is moving into the range of those shields. The Athenas will be comfortably destroyed, but 1 Mirage tank does come into support of his main force. Wow, we see, wow, a very sneaky push from the Allies, from the Empire player as well. He's moving his tanks towards the backside, all the way around to his opponent's main base to destroy the economy. Beautifully played. beautifully played by the Empire player, indeed, and the Empire player recognizing that he is not going to be a match of those two Mirage tanks. He is going to retrieve it with his force of tanks, and is now going to produce a large amount of tanks, enough amount in order for him to keep up the pressure and use the support of those infantries to overwhelm his opponents. And with just one refinery operational, the Allies players looking at the face of a large amount of trouble here. And now the harassment of those two tanks are continuing from the main base to the current main base of the Allies players. Well, and has now destroyed one of the miners there. The general rank tsunami tank is so potent, it's not even funny. And move in with your force. Your opponent's out of position, and now the attention of the Allies players draw to his waterside refinery here. He is forced to protect the refinery, but the refinery is actually blocking the field of view of those Mirage tanks, so they cannot shoot at the tsunami tanks. So basically, the refinery of the Allies was protecting those two tanks from being taken out by the Mirage there. But the Athena cannon does have sufficient range and the target as well to deal with those two tanks, and those two tanks are going to reposition themselves in order to put up more firepower to this refinery here. And with a decent amount of micro, it is looking very, very close for the Empire player to destroy this refinery here. And once this gets destroyed, this would be game. I cannot imagine that the Allies player will be able to come back from that. Does he have enough money for another refinery? No, he doesn't. So what he has is what he has. And being against his opponent's fully functional unit production capabilities, I cannot imagine that he will win the battle here. So the only thing that his opponents need to do is to sit back and macro up a large enough force to overwhelm his opponents eventually. So now the Allies player, recognizing that, is looking to sell the most of his unit production structures in order to crank out as many units as possible and give a one straight up push as soon as possible before his opponent's army gets too large to manage. And I don't know, is it already too large to manage? I assume so, but with just two tier 3 Mirage tanks and one Athena cannon, this might be enough to take out this force if micro correctly, I think. Oh no, those beams are just acting as a beacon for the Empire player to push in with his main force here. Now the impending doom is coming from the Imperial base to the Allies base. I'm sorry, I don't know how to be dramatic here. Can you teach me, guys? I don't know, but the point being that the force of the Empire players being very scary, and the two Mirage tanks do get destroyed pretty sufficiently. And would the trick work a third time? Would he be able to destroy most of the four forces with just one beam? And now we are going to see that the Empire players are not going to make the same mistake. Most of his tanks do survive, so it is game. A very good game, a very drawn out game, but a very good game. So I would like to put up an acknowledgement to thank Anti-Darwin to provide to me this game. He gave me the link and told me to cast it, so I did. Thank you, Anti-Darwin, and I will see you next time.